Because I'm not tech savvy, I'm recording my screen, so deal with it. So, this lesson is a health lesson on sleeping, and it's focused for 4th grade health. And so the standards I chose were 4.1.1. Students will comprehend concepts related to health promotion and disease prevention. And then standard 4.7.1, students will demonstrate the ability to practice health-enhancing behaviors and avoid or reduce health risks. My learning objectives were students can record the amount of hours they sleep each night and compare it to the recommended amount of hours that they should have each night. And then students can express how they feel when they get too little, enough, or even too much sleep. And students can explain the importance of sleep. My diagnostic assessment is just my observation of students probably know what sleep is and how it's important because their parents have explained to them that having a solid bedtime is very important. And the two individual differences that I have for two students are CK, he or she, is legally blind, and so I'll provide her enlarged copies of the PowerPoint where the font's bigger so she can follow along on her own. And then I have BK, who has ASD and will be given a hard copy of the presentation as well, and will also be given either alternative exams and a quiet room to do a summative exam or any sort of exams. But since we're doing a portfolio, I'll have specific worksheets available for him to fill out so he doesn't have to go through the stress of creating diagrams or anything like that on his own. Materials for the lesson are journals, notebook journals, a smartboard, and desks arranged in pods. So my behavior expectations are that students will be respectful and listen by not interrupting class or me, and following directions when given and split up into different activities. My personal goals are to monitor activity to make sure all students are engaged and correct any students that are not, just to reinforce the behaviors that I want, and explain content clearly and answer any questions, and have independent and group activities throughout the lesson so students that have different learning styles are targeted, and just to have diversity within the lesson. So my anticipatory set would be having a journal for about 3 minutes, and there's going to be a 2-part question of what is sleep and why is sleeping important. And after the journal time, I'll list the objectives of the lessons of what is sleep, why is it important, what happens during sleep, and how does sleep make you feel, and how to fall asleep or what distracts you from falling asleep. Pretty simple that the academic language is sleep. Activities, it's pretty detailed here. So, zoom in. After journaling, I'll pick a couple students at random through a random generator to share what they wrote about, and then share what sleep is and the physical benefits of sleeping. Then it'll turn into a group discussion where students in their pod groups will share how they feel based off past experience of what happens when they get too little, enough, or even too much sleep. And to follow that up, I'll ask each pod to share one thought that they had, and it doesn't matter who. And for 4, I'll show a chart of how much sleep adults, teens, and children should be getting each night. And I'll even have the section that they fall under highlighted and emphasize that you should be getting this amount of sleep, which is like 9 to 10 hours each night. And then I'll even say, maybe you should ask your parents when you go home, hey, how much sleep do you think you get each night? Because we learned today that you should be getting this much. And then it can be even the same if they have older siblings. And then the final slide will go into what distracts you from falling asleep. So do you have caffeine or sugary drinks before you go to bed? Are you on your phone a lot? Do you play video games? Are you awake from napping or sleeping too much earlier in the day? And just explain that these are all factors that can add up to why you might have a hard time staying asleep, falling asleep at night. And then finally, I'll introduce the sleeping portfolio. And this will actually fall before the formative assessment, which is also my closure, a Kahoot quiz. As you can see, I'll have a couple questions. These are just examples of how many hours of sleep should you get each night. The answer should be 9 to 10 hours. Which of the following foods might keep you awake at night? Answer is soda. Which is not a benefit of sleeping? Being cool. That's just like a trick question. And what part of the day should you be sleeping? Nighttime. They should not be sleeping in the daytime. If not, there's a problem. And summative assessment is actually my sleeping portfolio. So students will track their hours of sleep per night for 1 week after this lesson and provide a short description each night of how they felt after each night of how they felt when they woke up. And I'll even give them a chart to fill out, and then I'll give them a hard copy again to like put the finalized descriptions on there and hours for the portfolio. And then they will also provide a description of their typical after-school routine. So do they have practice for sports? Do they eat dinner with their family or on the go? When do they do their homework? Do they play video games, go out with friends? Or do they just shower and go to bed? And they'll describe like how does that play into their sleeping habits. And finally, they'll write a 1-page paper answering the following questions of how much sleep did they get each night and on average for the week, and then is this within the recommended amount of hour range for sleep for their age, and will you change your sleeping habits based off these results? If so, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? And that's basically it. And if I didn't mention before, the presentation format that I'm using would be a PowerPoint on the smartboard.